are listening to the Balancing Act podcast. Here's your hosts, Jamie Wonko and Joe Vitale.
Actually recording.
Hello, and welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I am Jamie Wonko. I am here with Joseph Vitale.
Well, hello. We are back again.
We are back again for part 2 with Jonathan Mast, the AI expert.
Guru. I like guru.
Enthusiast.
I mean, the first thing we have
Guru?
the first thing we have to ask here before we really jump into this AI is, we know that it's Whitebeard Strategies on the email, but we got to know, like, how long has the beard been being grown, because it is an epic beard. And as Jamie knows, I had a beard for a while and everyone hated it. So
Mr. Vitale's beard could rival your beard, Mr. Mast, but I have
no,
to
it could
say,
not.
his daughter made a bet with him that if she scored a goal in soccer, he would have to shave it.
Yes.
And no
I
one
did
was upset when that
I did make
goal
her,
was
and
scored.
if I could find the video, I'll put it in the episode. If I did make her go to the barber shop with me and actually use the clippers to like shave it. She was so grossed out. I forgot about that. So yeah,
It wasn't
Oh.
nearly as gorgeous as your beard, Mr. Mast. So.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you. You're being way too kind. This beard's been growing for just about 7 years. I started growing it when my granddaughter was born, and she turned 7 in October. So, almost 7 years.
Okay.
I almost want to see a picture of him sans the beard.
Oh.
There's one on my wife's Facebook that she posted of when we got married 20 some years ago. And part of the reason I have a beard is because I'm lazy and don't like to shave.
Okay.
The other part of the reason is that I have an incredible baby face. And candidly, at 55, I don't want a baby face anymore. And so the beard hides it. But yeah, she posted one on our 21st anniversary back in July. And a number of people that I know well who have never seen me without a beard and only know me the last 7 years were like, "Oh my goodness, you look very different." I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I have a beard."
It's amazing how much there's I watch I'm a big football fan, so I watch Hard Knocks on HBO, and Matt Eberflus, I think his name is, the head coach of the Bears. Like last year, he didn't have a beard and he looked like a man child. And now he's got like a beard and he's like,
Exactly.
He's a handsome looking guy. Guy looks nice.
Have you heard the song from Saturday Night Live that they wrote about one of the hosts said about baby having, it's really funny. It's not necessarily,
I'll have to look that up,
but it's about having a baby. I got a baby face. They did like this whole rap. It was really, really funny about.
I think
that sounds hilarious.
An older man with a baby face.
Yes.
That would be me. Yes, that would be me.
So, anyway, thank you again for joining us as part of our discussion
Absolutely.
on AI, and this one is affectionately titled "The Elephant in the Room," right? How we can have students better leverage the tools of ChatGPT, Bard,
Claude.
What was it? Claude? What was the other one?
Claude. Yep. Gemini.
And how we can better use those in the classroom. We talked in our last episode about policy, and many school districts are banning ChatGPT and these different models from student use on district devices, and of course they're just going on personal devices and using them anyway. But it leads to a larger discussion about what these AI tools are going to provide for our students. I think I on social media there was I think it was Wyclef Jean who talked about how these AI tools are really going to like open source education for students that maybe can't afford to go to college, for them to be able to learn, about abstract concepts or things that they always wanted to know about that they didn't have access to. I know Jamie talked about the library before in a previous episode. And of course, libraries are a wonderful tool in our society, but, now students are able to find all sorts of information at their fingertips. But how, that's what our discussion is going to be about today, is how we can better, instruct our students to use these tools in an ethical manner.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I agree with the thought of open sourcing education, but I want to give credit to all the educators and teachers here. It's not going to remove the need for teachers. In fact, it may change the way that you can teach. It may broaden your ability to teach people, because you may find that you can now teach people literally around the globe from your living room. but it's not going to remove the need for teachers. I know some of the educators I've talked to, they're like, but Jonathan, if this happens, they're not going to need me. No, we still need you. We need the people to help guide us through that process. In the same way that I sell business courses that people pay money for, they could go just ask Google and learn most of the things that I teach them, but they want my perspective, they want my guidance, they want my teaching. That same thing is true of all educators. So I want to begin with that because I think that's really important. But I do agree, and one of the reasons I love AI is I'm a lifelong learner, and if I want to learn about something, I now have a tool that enables me to learn about anything at any hour of the day in any place I'm at, regardless. As long as I have an internet connection, I can learn about virtually anything that comes up. And I think that's a really great way to be, because in the old days, I had to go, who do I know who knows about this? Who can I go talk to? And then maybe I'd go to the library and hope that they had that, because I grew up in a small town, and while we had a nice library, we didn't have everything. Right. And then the internet came along, and I had Google, and I could find a lot, but I still had to do a lot of research, and you never know whether it was good or not. Now I have the ability to get more data faster, and while I still don't always know if it's good or not, I have the ability to very quickly analyze that data using AI tools to identify discrepancies and things like that, and that I could never do before. And so I think AI is really just a tremendous boost to educators and the education of individuals around the world.
Yeah, and the piece, the I think the most important word in what you just said was analyze, because I think that's the reason that teachers will always have a job, because they are the ones who really are giving that ability and to be able to reflect and analyze and figure things out and teach that skill.
Absolutely,
that's not natural. That doesn't come naturally to the average learner.
Yeah. That's why we need educators and teachers, because we need to be taught. Most of us are not capable of learning effectively without some leadership. And that's why we need the teachers. So I do want to reassure them, this is not going to take away all the teaching jobs. In fact, I think it's going to open up more opportunities. I spoke with a teacher the other day who, due to life circumstances, can't be in the same district that she's been in for many years. She had to move. Her husband got a different job, and she decided, instead of going and applying at the new district, she was going to take the skills that she has and literally open up an online tutoring course. And she's done that now, and she's got great hours. She's making good income. She's able to do the things that she loves. And she was just sharing how amazed she was, because just a couple years ago, she could have never imagined doing that. And she can now do it today. It's part of her life. And it gives her the ability to, again, do the things that she and her family have decided are important to them.
There's probably no phrase that I enjoy more than work smarter, not harder. And so to me, anything that comes along that seems to take, some of that, and not that everything, it's such a waste of time, but there's a lot of things in our profession that take up quite a bit of time that aren't necessarily as important as many of the other things that we have to do. They're just so time consuming. And so anything to me that can, lighten the load and make it where we can continue to kind of be on the path of working smarter, not harder, is worthwhile. It's a worthwhile investment of time for sure.
In our last episode, we talked about, how to use any of the AI models to increase student creativity and how students could use it on a project. And it was really great to hear that suggestion, Jonathan, of, have students look up what's the criteria for an effective project, have it be like that sounding board, and allowing students to really take ownership over okay, here's the project I'm going to create, and this is the criteria that has to be in that project. And I'm taking ownership of, you're having that student involvement, right? Which is, of course, is a big part of, it's part of our observation process, actually, as teachers. Are we allowing student autonomy? Are we allowing them to have a say in their learning? And I think that's where, and maybe you could speak to that a little bit, Jonathan, other ways that we might be able to let students have a say in their learning while using some of these AI models. Because I think that was a great comment and use for these models in the classroom.
Well, I'm assuming students today are probably like students were when I was in school, and that's it. We didn't ever like being told what to do. But
Mhm.
if we could engage that student, and if the teacher could engage me in a project or in a lesson, I was much more likely to embrace it and learn it, because all of a sudden it became interesting to me. You guys mentioned, you guys both are in history. And I'll admit, a lot of the history teachers I had didn't engage me in that. And I didn't find history that enjoyable until later in life, when I started realizing how incredibly intricate and interesting it was, as well as how imperative it was to understand, because history tends to repeat itself.
Mhm.
But I didn't catch that when I was going through my history classes in middle school and all that. And I think AI gives us the ability to help the teacher direct the study, to direct the lesson, but allow the students to explore in ways and learn things that are of interest to them. I mentioned in episode 1, my high school student is interested in battleships from World War II. I don't know why, but he is. And the really cool thing is that while learning about World War II in his history class, he was able to do some deep dives into the battleships, the things that I didn't necessarily care about when I was his age, but were really enamoring to him. And it caused him to learn everything in that lesson much better, because it all related back to something that he had an interest in. All to the point that we actually went on a trip and visited one of those ships that's now in dry dock, and did a tour of it, which as a father, I thought was just an amazing experience to do with my son, because I would have not necessarily had that opportunity had he not been able to, quite say, customize or personalize that lesson to a certain extent.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I'm thinking that, I'm trying to think about some of the things that I do with the kids, and just allowing them to sort of specifically tailor some items in their own. There's always a challenge for one particular thing that we do with these creation projects, and there's always quite a few kids who are like, I don't know where to start. I just don't know what to do. And I think it would be such a great opportunity for them to be able to use the AI feature, to be able to kind of guide them towards something that they might be able to do, rather than me just telling them, how about this?
Well,
Yeah, well,
especially with it, I don't know where to start, because now with I don't know where to start, I can literally do something as a student I'm comfortable with. I can sit at a
right.
computer. Every student's comfortable with that, and they're probably more comfortable asking a question of a computer than they are of you. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just the reality of where we're at in 2024. And
Yes.
now they can do that on their, or even better, as we know, they're all very comfortable with one of these. And they can grab their phone and they can start asking questions. And we know they're comfortable on that. And if that gets the students to embrace their learning more, then in my mind, that's a win for everybody across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think about what you just, having a student sit down in front of the computer and go to ChatGPT and say, "I'm really interested in Roman history. Provide me and gladiators. Provide me 3 possible hands-on project ideas that I could do for a 8th grade middle school classroom."
Yeah.
Like, maybe giving them
Mhm.
a prompt to say, like, "Okay, let's see what it comes up with." And it might come up with 3 things and you're like, "Ugh, I don't want to do any of those." But at least there's some kind of jumping off point. There's some kind of like, okay, make a diorama. All right, maybe you're not into that, but maybe you could, draw a some of the different Roman gladiators and the outfits that they wore, and present that to the class. Maybe that student has an art background, so at least there'll be some kind of jumping off point to start with.
Mhm.
Um, that is an avenue that might be able to be taken, where a student could then leverage it to come up with some project ideas.
Mhm.
Especially if you're trying to, and yes, we are. And by the way, I will raise my hand on this one. Uh, Type A control freaks don't like to relinquish control. But
I'm with you.
allowing students to have that autonomy to come up with, like, all right, you have these projects that you need to do, and the creations that you guys do in the 8th grade are wonderful, because students can really kind of choose their own adventure, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, but it gives them the autonomy to choose something that they feel is going to be best, and something that they're interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, Jamie, we know some people that are like, "Ugh, this subject is boring. We don't like this subject at all." So, you need to make it exciting. Sometimes it's not. but you need to make it as exciting as you can. So a kid who is really into battleships gets to experience something, that he maybe wouldn't have experienced before without taking that self-direction.
The
So,
other thing
Yeah.
too, though, is that even if so for me, math is the worst, right? So if someone wants to say like history is boring or reading is reading, who wants to read? For me, it's math. So I understand like the way that people feel about the subjects that I love is how I hate math so much. So one of the things that I did do last year as a parent was to use chat with my kids for math, certain math problems. You have to show the work. And I have to say, for me as a student, if I had the tool to have the ability to see every single step of a problem once I got home and was trying to tackle that for homework, it's not necessarily like just to copy it, but to be able to see it again, 6 hours removed from my teacher without anybody there to help me. Maybe they assigned the evens that night and not
Hmm.
the odds, and I couldn't just copy the answer.
Yes.
It was like, woo, just give me the odds, lady. Thank you. For that also, I think it's great because, you're able to then sit and say, wow, I can see it again. And now I can try to apply this to the next problem, which,
Right.
usually the 10 problems are generally the same. So if you can't do one, you can't do any of them. But at least if you were able to sort of have this jumping off point of, I can see every single step, so it's not just necessarily, applicable for the subjects that we're more familiar with, but, for the others as well, I think. And, and for boring, right. There's got to be a subject that, is boring
Well,
for
and
everybody.
it depends on yeah, I mean, so it depends on the student. I mean,
Right.
some students love math, some students can't stand it.
Yeah.
But going back to kind of historical perspective, let's imagine that we're talking. I was kidding in the pre-call about, or I think in episode 1 about, how I remember when Columbus landed in America, because I remember it rhymes with blue, the ocean blue, so it must
Yeah.
be 1492. Well, that's the only reason I remember that is because it's something I can bring up. But what if, for example, my teachers at that time had said, okay, Jonathan, what are you interested in? And at that time in life, I don't know. But let's just say hypothetically that I was interested in cooking. I could have not only learned about Columbus's voyage over to America and all of the things surrounding that. I understand that's a charged topic. But anyway, I could have learned about the food they ate and how they packed and how they cooked on the ship, because I could do a deeper dive into that because that's what interested me. But along the way, I'd still be learning the other things I needed to learn, because now that entire subject would be more interesting. Again, maybe my son, the battleship guy, might have been more interested in learning about the pirates and what was the situation with pirates and how did they defend that and all that. I don't have any idea even was a problem, but I imagine it was. And by being able to do that and self-direct to a set, it reminds me as a parent of when I go to my young child, which I don't have anymore, and go, which coat do you want to wear today, the blue one or the red one? I didn't give them a choice whether they were going to wear a coat, but I gave them a choice, maybe whether it was a coat or a sweater or whatever the case was, so that and as educators, I think we can do that same thing. We can say, all right, we're going to learn about Columbus's voyage because that's our lesson plan. But within that, we can now customize that and you can learn specifics. And you as the teacher don't have to become an expert at it, because the student can literally come back and teach you things that they've learned about how did they pack their food? What were the pirate situations in that scenario? All of that type of stuff. And I think create a more engaging lesson plan for everybody, the teacher and all of the students.
Yeah, for sure. And the levels, that's so important.
Yes,
Because we're just hit with so many different levels of ability, and to be able to meet them where they are is so important. And
absolutely.
at least gives them the feeling that they can do it. There's I remember being in graduate school, and there was a book that I had read, and it was the idea of teaching having a walkabout. And it was like the 7th grade, they had a walkabout. And so like they had to pick one specific topic, and then everything else that they learned for the year was guided by that one topic, and the idea of that always really stuck with me, because it could have been, I'm going to learn everything I can possibly learn about trees. And then everything that they did was like to calculate, the age of the trees, or to, research the wood or the places or how it's grown. And every subject was based on that one specific idea that they had chosen themselves. And so the idea of like, to become really to own a specific topic,
Yeah.
I love it.
One of the other, our conversation has centered a lot around, high school, middle school, how to leverage it in a classroom. But, we have some elementary school teachers that
Oh,
are
yeah.
in our listening audience. And, when we're talking about younger elementary age students, which I have never wanted to teach in my career. I don't know about you, Mrs. Wanko, but I have not.
I'm going to take you back real quick to 1999, and I
yeah.
was a substitute teacher in a preschool class,
Oh,
and it was Sloppy Joe Day. And I'm going to tell you that after opening about 87,000 sporks, and the Sloppy Joes were just full, I was like, and no. So,
no.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I hear you.
But it's a great question. What do you have some suggestions for that, for the early childhood? Or I haven't thought about.
Well, I think that we've talked a lot, as you mentioned, about older students, but I think all students are starting to get into using AI, and even if they're not quite there, I think they'll be there quickly. In other words, I think we're going to continue to see ways that they're used at younger and younger ages. At the same point, I had this comparison, in my mind that I wanted to share. I don't know if it's directly applicable, but there's a time when we still need to learn basics. So, if I'm learning math today, I don't think that we should skip teaching how to do addition and subtraction and long form division and multiplication just because AI exists and we have calculators. But I do believe, as it happened even when I was in school, and I'm an old man now, when I got up to taking algebra and geometry and trigonometry, guess what? I could use a calculator because they knew I already knew how to add and subtract and divide. And what value was there really in me being able to do long form division of massive numbers and exponentials once I got to that point that didn't provide any additional learning value that I was going to use? Because again, in the real world, I was going to have a computer or a calculator to do it. So I could use that then. And I think that applies to younger students especially. We still, I believe, need to teach them the basics that they need to learn. But I think it's important as educators that we embrace that probably from really preschool on nowadays, in many cases, those students are going to have access to AI tools. And therefore, as educators, instead of saying, no, it's not going to exist, I'm not going to do it, we should try to figure out how do we incorporate that. Going back to my bias again as an employer, I want that student, when they graduate, to have the skills to learn, to know how to use the tools already. And I'm hoping that through the education system, they've learned things that AI can't necessarily teach them about how to discern things, how to analyze things, how to review things and make decisions and follow decision trees based upon the facts that they see. That's going to be a lot harder for AI to teach those things. AI may help me gather the information, but I still need to be the one to make a lot of those choices and to make that ultimate discernment. And again, as an employer, I want my employees, the students that you're teaching, to know how to use the tools to do that smarter, as you were talking about earlier, and faster. Not going, well, I don't know how to do that because our teachers never let us use it. So I think embracing and just understanding that AI is part of it. It probably, as we go into this new school year in 2024, 2025, it's probably a reality for virtually every student that exists that they're going to have some access to AI tools.
Whether it be on their district provided device or their personal device,
Either mom and dad's phone for that matter. I mean,
you brought up a good point in the last episode where, the school might have, I don't know if they drew a hard line and they said, you're not using it. And they're like, well, actually you should use it to clarify concepts or to explain things that maybe you don't understand. I'm not saying to cut corners. And I brought up the thing that I say each and every day to my own kids and to my students. Assistant, not replacement. We need to know how to
Yes.
use. I use Canva as the example, because and Canva. And Jonathan, I don't know if I assume you're familiar with Canva.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So sorry about that. And
No,
Canva.
that's good.
Yeah, Canva is a fantastic tool. It does a lot of cool stuff for presentations, for making flyers, for doing stuff on social media, graphics, free stuff, paid stuff. It's got a whole bunch of things. It also has a wonderful AI tool.
Yes, it does.
And talking about it with my students, said, okay, look, if you've never used Canva before, it serves you no purpose to just go to the AI tool and have it make a flyer for you. And I always explain it to seventh graders, try to explain it with something that they might understand. It's like, okay, who's played with Legos? And all the kids raise their hands.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you bought a Lego set. You bought a fire truck for $60. Great. Okay, great. Would you have somebody else build it? They were like, no, that's not fun. Like, why would I buy a Lego set and have somebody else build it? So I'm like, okay, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you got to learn how to use the tool before you start using the AI feature that's going to do it for you. And
yes.
I do an activity in the early part of the year, and this is how I started my conversation with my own students last year. We were doing a writing activity, and I said, oh, and here's some possible story starters that you could use about George Washington. And I kind of threw up these 5 different sentences to start with. And then I said, okay, I want to pause for a second. I want to show you where I got these from. And I went to ChatGPT and I copied and pasted the prompt that I used, and it gave me the 5 things. And I said, look, I know how to write story prompts, but in order for efficiency, because I had literally forgotten to do that morning, I sat down and said, okay, I got to get these real quick. Let me go to ChatGPT. And I thought about it. I put it in. I then read them to make sure they made sense. I edited a few of them. I put them on the screen and said, so I'm using this to do something that I know how to do. So it's assisting me in my process of instructing you guys. It's not taking away or doing the job for me. And I think that's where a lot of this conversation, is very important, as we have to really, as educators, teach students how to, of course, do things ethically, but use these tools as assistants and not a replacement, because every platform is starting to have some kind of AI tool to do the job for you, but it serves us no purpose if we don't know how to use the tool in the first place.
Yeah, there's quite a few people in our school who have who don't allow Canva.
Which I don't understand.
Same. I really enjoy it. I think, especially there's kids, who obviously are going to have, between so many of them wanting to be engineers, graphic design. There's just so many parts and pieces to it. And to learn what is aesthetically pleasing and why does it look good and how is it too crowded and where's the placement? There's so many parts of that to me that are beyond, they copy. And it's like, did someone tell you that they copy? And it's almost like there's this idea of, swallow a piece of gum, it stays in your stomach for 7 years. It's like, is that true? I think it's like they heard someone else say that it was bad, so they just repeat it. And it's easier to just say, no, we're not doing that, than to actually take the time to look and say, well, maybe here are the other things we can get from it. Also, when a kid, this is always the way for me. When the students really like something, I always feel leaning into it. It's really hard to get tweens and teens interested.
They hate everything.
I mean,
teenagers.
I have one. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Jamie had a student a couple years ago, and she was just angry all the time. She's like, I hate this too. I hate it more. Let's hate it together. Let's do it. Like, why do you hate it?
Every day she would come in and every day she'd walk in and I would say, what are we hating today?
But my guess is, as you worked on, she probably opened up, right?
Oh, big time. So it's just, to me, I just never understand that as an educator. If you have a group of kids that are really jazzed about something, why are you not trying to support that and move forward with it and sort of help and guide what they're enjoying, rather than we're not doing that. And then they wonder why the kids are tuned out.
A lot of that, I think, and Jonathan, I didn't want to jump on top of you there, but I think a lot of that has to do with 2 things. Number one, it's fear. right? Sometimes they're afraid to be like, oh, it's another tool. I have to learn how to use the tool. I have to be able to problem solve with the tool, or maybe they've had some kind of preconceived notion or problem with it. And number two, we've talked about this before, the changes in ed tech and the different platforms that there are outpacing people's ability to keep up with those changes. It is
No
just
question.
virtually like I took like one, like I knew Nearpod pretty well. Like I took like a couple months. I was like, oh, let me try something else. And then like I went back to Nearpod and I was like, oh my God, everything has changed. I have to figure all this out again.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a big challenge. And teachers sometimes are like, you know, Jonathan, you said it before, we are at capacity, right? We're like
100%.
we are, you know, to use a ship analogy, the ship is flooding and we're stuck in there. We're getting that little last bit of oxygen to keep ourselves alive. And nobody wants to like, let's do one more thing. I think that's, you know, part of the issue anyway. Sorry.
Well, and I get that. And I guess a couple thoughts come to mind. One, I want to encourage the teachers listening to this to go back when you decided to make a decision to get into education. My guess is you made that choice because you were excited about it. And part of it was that you were excited probably by a teacher that you had, and you saw how they changed a life by getting you involved in a topic and a subject, by getting you to want to learn. And you probably, and I'm not an educator, but I'm guessing you probably had that vision that I want to do that same thing. I want to have that impact on some people to make them love learning like I love learning. And the reality is, in dealing with the bureaucracy and the government and everything else that gets involved in, and not to mention the parents, which I am one of in school, is probably enough to make you have forgotten that day. But I really believe that AI can help you do that because it can also help you as a teacher save time. Yeah. So obviously, then I think in order to be doing that, we need to demonstrate to the kids, again, effective use. But imagine as an educator being able to use it to save. My promise with my business clients is an hour a day. Let's say we could only do half of that. What if you could get an extra 30 minutes a day, every day for your classroom? What difference would that allow you to make just in connecting with your students? Or for that matter, maybe having another cup of coffee, whatever the case may be. AI really, truly, I believe, could help you do that. Again, I know in a business scenario, and I stake my reputation on it with my clients, will save you an hour a day. I absolutely believe as an educator, not being one, but I believe we could certainly do half that. And what would that mean to you if we could find you an extra 30 minutes every day? Maybe it's just the ability to get home on time and, you know, put your feet up for a minute. I don't know. It means something different probably to everybody, just the way that different students have different passions that they're excited about. The other thing you guys mentioned that I'd love to encourage you to do as teachers, when you introduce AI, again, we want you to teach responsible use as parents and as employers. Show examples where it fails as well as examples of where it's successful, because the students are not paying, they're not paying any attention. So I can grab virtually any quote out of any book that I've ever read. And again, being a business guy, I love like those success quotes. And I can ask ChatGPT who wrote it, and I can ask it 3 times and get 3 different people. And you may go, well, that just proves that ChatGPT is stupid and we shouldn't use it. No, what it proves is that the documents that it studied, the books that it's sucked up and learned, have different attributions for that quote. So we're not necessarily sure who it was because it's picking its best guess. But if I demonstrate that to my students and go, here's a way that I can use it when, as you were talking about, I can amplify my knowledge and my skill. Here's one where I really don't know who said this famous quote. And obviously we don't want to pick one that like came from Abraham Lincoln or something like that. But one that comes to mind for myself was, and now I'm going to forget it, just there's my ADD, just kicked in, had it on the tip of my tongue. But was one that's often attributed to P.T. Barnum. Again, I'm a marketer. So one of the quotes is that we only know that only half our marketing works. The problem is we don't know which half. Now that's often attributed to P.T. Barnum. But if you ask ChatGPT, it may say P.T. Barnum and it may give you other names. And that's an example of how you can show students, see, because this was trained on a lot of stuff, not all of that being accurate, we need to validate and verify where this came from. The cool thing is if I go to a tool like Perplexity and ask, Perplexity will actually do the research and come back and say it's most commonly attributed to P.T. Barnum, but others believe it may have come from these 3 individuals. Now that's something I can work with. And if you demonstrate that to a student, I think you can open their eyes to the reality of what AI is and what it isn't.
I think it might also be, as teachers are starting to say loosen the reins on using this, 2 things. Number one, I'm going to go back to gamification for a second, right? Which to me is grossly overused. Kahoots and Gimkits and Quizlet lives and all that stuff. There are some people that are doing that day after day after day after day. And to me, all that is rote memorization of information. That is not application of knowledge to anything. In regards to it's fun, it's exciting. You do it every once in a while, but to do it day after day after day after day and base classwork grades on it and test grades on it, no thanks.
And the kids who are slower processors know the answer
poorly on it,
but they'll never win because it takes them 4 seconds longer than someone else, so they're always losing.
And it becomes frustrating.
Yes, exactly.
I wouldn't want to see these AI models become that, right? So that's the first thing. But secondly, I think it's really important as teachers are starting to introduce it into the classroom, like taking a class period to say, okay, I know you're using it. You know that I know you're using it. How are you using it? Demonstrate for me some of the ways that you've used any of these AI models. Demonstrate how you use ChatGPT to do a math problem. I had one student talk about how they went into their refrigerators like, I want a snack. I don't know what I want to have. Here's the things in my fridge. Tell me what I can make. And I was like,
yes,
shut your mouth. You did what? That's amazing. That's an amazing, like, I would have never thought of doing that. But then like other kids, like, oh, I'm doing that when I go home. Like that leads to a greater discussion as to how the tool is going to be used, not just in an education setting, but, for the hell of it. There's nothing wrong with doing that and learning how it's going to impact, life in general. I think it's great to do that as educators because sometimes, we can learn a lot from our students too. I think it's great for us to leverage that in the classroom.
I agree. I saw an interview a couple of days ago. So right now we're coming upon Beetlejuice season. The Beetlejuice movie is coming. If you haven't been out and about in the world, there is every dog toy Beetlejuice, slippers Beetlejuice, sweatshirts. Have you seen it?
Don't say you said his name twice. Don't say it again.
Have you seen them? Have you seen the merch?
I have not. No,
I have seen the merch.
I mean, it is everywhere. And so I saw an interview with Jenna Ortega, and she is starring in the movie. So she'll play Lydia's daughter. And it's this remake of the movie. And but in the interview, and this was something that I was thinking of earlier when you were saying, what is really holding people back from trying things that are new. And so the interview was talking to her about the movie and how, it's scary. And does she, gravitate towards things that are scary? And she said, I don't always like things that are scary, but I do like to feel excitement. And so when I feel scared about something, I try to just tell myself, like, it's really not fear, it's excitement, and kind of go with the excitement. Me too. So our whole conversation today, I'm thinking like, yeah, what if we approach these things with excitement rather than, just I'm scared, I can't do it,
That's a shift. It's a mindset shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
The great thing about the building in which Jamie and I work in is we are encouraged to try and fail.
Yeah.
We're like, I think
that's awesome.
And if our boss came in and observed us and we did a lesson and it was like trying something new and it went horrible, she's like, okay, what'd you learn from that? Well, I learned that this and that and the other thing. Like, okay, let's try it again. Like we do, we're encouraged to do that. I pray that every educator works in an environment like that. Because I think it's great for us to have that opportunity. But that's a great point. Like having excitement to use these tools might lead you to have a little bit more understanding.
Right.
So
Well, and I think that's important. As we talked a little bit in episode 1, AI is not going away. This is not a fad that is going to go away in a year or two. It's just going to continue to get better and better at what it does. And it's going to become virtually impossible, if it's not already, to tell when our students are using it. But if we teach them how to use it as a tool instead of as a way to cheat, I think that they'll embrace it as well.
Yeah. And,
Absolutely.
I think future employers are going to they're looking for, I don't remember where I read this or if it's still accurate, but the number one thing that employers are looking for prospective employees to be able to do is problem solve. Like
Yeah.
when you go on an interview at a fast food restaurant, they're like, okay, you got a customer that comes up to you and they say that their hamburger's cold. How do you handle it? That's problem solving. Like
And
you have
that's
to be able
exactly what we need. Yeah.
yeah. Like, and you had said, I don't know if it was in this episode of the last one, like you're not asking them like, when did the War of 1812 happen? You're you're not asking them historical
Exactly.
information. You're asking them, do you know how to use Google? Can you do XYZ with ABC? Like the knowledge of the tool and how to apply it is more important than knowledge and wisdom, right? I heard an English soccer player say, knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Which I
Yeah.
thought was a very, I want to like put that on a poster in my classroom, because like we could have knowledge of a tool, but wisdom is knowing how to use it, when to use it, what's the appropriate time, and how am I going to, foster my learning by using this particular tool. That's
Yeah.
kind of the approach that I hope that many educators are going to take as we move forward. Because like you said, Jonathan, this ain't going away.
No.
Yeah. No, it's not.
Yeah, and when I'm on social media sometimes and you get like, some teachers that I follow, and they're like, here's 10 AI tools you can use in the classroom. Here's 3 new features that you can use. And like, I'm like there's all these things coming at you. And I feel like it gets overwhelming. It gets very overwhelming. And I think trying to do one thing well or incorporate one tool is a great place to start. And I wonder what other suggestions you might have in, suggesting to a teacher how to get their students to really buy into the idea of using these tools properly.
Well, I think the first step is that the teachers need to do that. It's not fair to expect you to go, okay, you can use AI, but I don't want to learn how to do it. As an educator, you need to learn how to use it too. The good news is as an educator, my guess is you have things you love to learn. It may not be your topic. It may be depending on what you teach. Because I know not everybody teaches things that you love, and I get that. But find something that you love and act as a student there and say, okay, I'm enamored with quilting. Picking something that first comes to mind. I'm not enamored with, but maybe I am. How can I learn about that? And if I want to learn about that, I can go have a conversation with any of the AI tools and say, I'm really enamored with quilting. And in fact, I'm really especially enamored with the quilting that took place around this time period. And I'd like to learn more about it. What can you tell me? And then have a conversation and dig deeper, because that's the exact same type of thing your students are going to do. They may not ask about quilting, but they might. But they're going to do that same thing. And so the first thing I want to recommend, don't try to encourage your students to use or not to use something that you're not familiar with. I think you'll find if you would literally pull out your phone, download the ChatGPT app or any other app, and next time you have 5 minutes, pull it out and start asking questions of it about a topic that you either know about. And I encourage you to start with one you know about and get comfortable with the level of knowledge it has. We talked earlier about libraries. And, I grew up in a time when I had to go to the library to learn everything. And if I didn't know somebody, but there was no internet, there was nothing else. Imagine now that inside your phone, you quite literally have access to every book in every library in every country in the world.
I mention that to my students all the time. It's like in the 90s, like if Miss Blanco and I were friends and we were at the park and we were swinging on the swings and I was, kids in New Jersey, it was like, hey, how many #1 songs does Bon Jovi have? And Jamie just went, I don't know. You just went about your day not knowing that information. You didn't have a way to look it up unless you maybe got to a Rolling Stone magazine. Like you had no way to know that information. And now it's
exactly,
you can pull it up and figure out how many number one songs they have, how many the number one songs they had in Budapest. You can know all the information at your fingertips.
Yeah.
So that's a very important point.
Yeah. So again, that's my best recommendation to any educator is this is not an evil thing that's going to ruin our lives. And if it is, you're going to have to work to get over that because it's here to stay. And the best way to get over it is to start using it. And I think you'll realize very quickly that much like a hammer that can be used to build things or to tear things down, it's a tool and it depends on how we use it. And if you can help your students understand that it's truly a tool and the tool is not in itself good or bad, it's not great or evil, it is just a tool. But then we can do what we've always dreamed of doing, and that's teaching the next generation how to be better than ourselves.
Well, you just wrapped up this episode in a bow. That was fantastic. I want to, thank you again, Jonathan, for joining us for these 2 episodes. There's for those of you who aren't watching on YouTube, you could check out jonathanmast.com/linktree for all things Jonathan Mast. And please give him a follow on any social media platform that you're on. Content sometimes comes from a marketing perspective, but there are some great tips about, about how to structure your prompts, how to use things a little bit more effectively. And as someone who's an advocate for AI myself, I really think and appreciate your perspective and I appreciate you, Jonathan, and you joining us for these episodes. It's a huge benefit for us as educators to have you on.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate both of you for such a welcoming attitude and for allowing me to share, because I know some of my opinions aren't necessarily popular with let's say the home office when we talk education. So I appreciate you allowing me to share those.
Thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate you. Joseph, I appreciate you.
Yeah, buddy, you're still sun-kissed in this episode. The lighting is so on
go
point.
Away. And I'm just going to spend the rest of the day on Claude.
All right, thanks everybody. We will talk to you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Balancing Act podcast will now be available weekly. Check out Apple Podcasts or Spotify and give us a follow. We appreciate you.